Sandrone is the new 5-star Cryo DPS coming in version 6.7, and she has the potential of becoming the next best Cryo DPS and maybe even reaching the top 5 strongest DPS in the game. In this guide, we'll go over the new Stellar Conduct reaction, as well as her talents and rotations, best weapons, artifacts, teams and constellations, and see just how strong she can actually become.
Hello, welcome to Genshin Filter, your quick guide for everything Genshin. So let's get started!
Before diving into her kit, we need to talk about the new reaction mechanic coming to the game called Stellar Reactions. Right now, it looks very similar to the Lunar reactions we had in Node Cry, which seems to be Hoyo's way of buffing old and underperforming reactions, while making the new characters the ones who can enable them. In Node Cry, all Lunar reactions were built around the Hydro element, so Colombina, the region Archon, which is Hydro, could support all of them. And since Stellar reactions seem to follow the same idea, I think it's safe to assume they will be centered around Cryo, so the Cryo Archon that Tsaritsa can support them the same way. The first stellar reaction we are getting, and the one Sandrone is focused around, is Stellar Conduct. It is basically a buffed version of the old Superconduct reaction, which happens when you mix Cryo and Electro together. But unlike regular Superconduct, Stellar Conduct is not really focused around physical damage. The way it works is when Cryo and Electro react, it won't deal any damage, the same as the Lunar Bloom reaction. Instead, it creates a Polestar field on the ground. Enemies inside the field still have their physical res shred by 40%, but characters who deal Stellar Conduct damage, like Sandrone, will also enter the Radiant Stellar Conduct state, giving their kits extra benefits. On top of that, dealing Electro and Cryo damage inside the field will generate stacks that buff Electro, Cryo and Stellar Conduct damage. 3 hits will generate 1 stack every 3 seconds, up to 12 stacks total, giving up to 40% Electro and Cryo damage, and doubling Stellar Conduct damage. So if you were hoping for a physical comeback like I was with Eula and Razor, unless newer supports somehow make this reaction benefit physical as well, it does not look like physical is coming back anytime soon. But there is still a huge win compared to Lunar reactions. In 6.7, older units seem to be getting buffs that let them deal Stellar Conduct damage as well, giving you more options against new Snezhnaya enemies without needing every new character. On the other hand, to enable Stellar Conduct in the team, you still need a character with the Stellar passive, which means you will probably still need to pull at least the Stellar reaction support for those buffed DPS characters. Sandrone is the first character with this passive, which, similar to the Lunar passive, buffs Stellar Conduct based on Sandrone's attack, up to 14% when she reaches 2000 attack, while also letting her enter the Radiant's Stellar Conduct state. And because the formula is also pretty much the same as the Lunar reactions, talent damage increases like normal and charge attack, skill and burst damage, as well as elemental damage buffs, won't increase this reaction damage. So if you are also hoping for a Furina and Kazuha comeback, as I was, you will probably be disappointed, as they seem to be doubling down on keeping them out of the new Snezhnaya meta as well.
Just a quick heads up guys, I'm live streaming almost every day, so if you want me to review your account or have any questions, I'll be happy to help you there as well. You can also hit the subscribe and bell button if you want to get notified every time I go live. Cheers!
Sandrone is a 5-star Cryo Claymore user who ascends with crit rate, and her main playstyle is as an on-field DPS, focused on dealing very high Stellar Conduct damage through her charge attack beams. Her normal attacks are standard Claymore hits and are irrelevant to her playstyle. Her charge attacks are the main part of her gameplay. By holding the attack button, Sandrone will summon her Marionette, which continuously fires beams in front of her, dealing Cryo damage. While she fires her beams, the mech will also periodically fire stronger condensed beams that deal AoE Cryo damage. If Sandrone activates the Stellar Conduct state, those condensed beams will deal very strong Stellar Conduct damage instead. While Sandrone is using her charge attack, she will also fill a special bar. Once this bar is maxed, her damage will drop dramatically, and this is where her elemental skill comes in. Her elemental skill makes Sandrone hover around the field for 6 seconds. While hovering, she quickly empties her special bar, allowing her to use her charge attack beam again. Additionally, while hovering, if there are enemies nearby, she will also fire 2 Cryo attacks, and while in the Stellar Conduct state, the second hit will deal Stellar Conduct damage. Because the cooldown of this skill is only 4 seconds, she can technically repeat this charge attack into skill sequence forever, though in real rotations, you will still want to swap off once your support's buffs and talents have expired. Her hovering also works as a great exploration ability, especially since sprinting while hovering makes her hover even faster, but consumes stamina. Her Elemental Burst is a straightforward damage ability. Sandrone summons multiple beam cannons in front of her, then fires a large beam that deals AoE Cryo damage. If she's in the Stellar Conduct state, the final beam will deal Stellar Conduct damage. Her Her Ascension 1 passive makes her regular gameplay loop even stronger. When Sandrone uses her skill while the bar is above 50, the second shot from the skill will deal much higher damage, reaching 400% of its original damage. And while the skill empties the bar, Sandrone will gain 1 stack for every 10 points lost, up to 10 stacks total. Then, when she uses her burst in the Stellar Conduct state, those stacks are consumed to make the final burst beam stronger, increasing its damage by 10% for each stack, up to 100%. So basically, you use her charge attacks to buff her skill, and then use her skill to buff her burst, creating perfect synergy that beautifully utilizes all of her talents together, which is such a cool kit design. Her Ascension 4 passive gives Sandrone elemental mastery based on her attack, up to 160 EM when she reaches 2000 attack, which is the same requirement as her stellar passive. This is a great addition to her kit, as similar to lunar reactions, stellar conduct hits also scale very well with EM. Her overworld passive gives extra snack rewards after turning in daily commissions with Catherine. For talent priority, you want to focus primarily on her charge attack, as it is the majority of her damage. Then level her burst and her skill, as both are also dealing very high stellar conduct damage thanks to her A1 passive. For rotations, start with your Electro and Cryo teammates, especially ones that have a lot of off-field hits, to generate as many stacks as possible from the Stellar Conduct field, and get as much of the buff as you can by the time you swap to Sandrone. Then swap to her and use her charge attack beam. Once you cap her bar, use Sandrone's skill to replenish the bar and generate stacks for her burst. Repeat this for a total of 3 charge attacks, and then use her burst for a big Stellar Conduct hit. Her signature weapon is her best in slot, giving 674 base attack and 44% crit damage. The effect gives 28% attack, as well as 16% stellar conduct damage when the wielder hits enemies with charge attacks, stacking up to 3 times for a total of 48%. This makes the weapon extremely good for her, giving her a high personal damage increase of around 25%. It's also a very nice stat stick for any attack scaling Claymore DPS, but there is no one else who can fully utilize its effect, given Sandrone is the only Claymore DPS who's capable of dealing stellar conduct damage at the moment. Other great alternatives are any offensive crit or attack claymore you have, especially ones that give buffs to crit, attack, or elemental mastery. Remember that like the lunar reactions damage, stellar conduct damage does not scale from talent and elemental damage buffs, so weapons that buff charge attack and elemental damage are not going to do much for her. For free-to-play, Tidal Shadow and Mailed Flower are great options. Tidal Shadow brings much more attack, while Mailed Flower focuses more on EM. So which one is better for you will depend on what you already have more of in her build and team buffs. Mega Magic Sword is also a good option, giving both attack and energy, which she does appreciate with her strong burst. For artifacts, her best set is the new Disenchantment in Deep Shadow, giving 18% attack, as well as 80% superconduct reaction damage and 40% stellar conduct damage. Additionally, if you attack an enemy affected by superconduct, your attack will have 16% more crit rate, which altogether makes this such a generous and pretty much broken set. On top of that, it's in the same domain as the new Hexarai support set, which is outright broken and definitely worth farming, and honestly you really have no reason to go for anything else. For main stats, go with attack on both the Sands and Goblet, and for the Circlet, use crit damage or crit rate to maintain a good 1:2 ratio. But if you go for a crit rate weapon, do notice that she also gets a lot of crit rate from her Ascension and Cryo Resonance, so in that case you might want to go for crit damage. For substats, make sure to get around 120% ER, so she can burst in most rotations, given how strong her burst is. Then go for crit rate and crit damage, followed by attack percent and flat attack, reaching 2000 attack to max her A4 and stellar passives. And of course, Elemental Mastery is also great. When it comes to Sandrone's teams, the main thing you want to focus on is dealing fast and consistent cryo and electro hits to the enemy to keep stacking the stellar conduct field buffs, and keep it as high as you can until the end of Sandrone's rotation combo. So you preferably want at least one off-field sub-DPS electro character to help trigger the reaction and get the field stacks, and one off-field sub-DPS cryo character to enable the cryo resonance in the team and also help get field stacks even faster. And the last slot becomes pretty flexible. It can be another cryo or electro character to help gather even more field stacks, or just a strong generic support that buffs Sandrone and the team. A lot of Sandrone's best teammates are looking to be the older characters who are getting buffed in the same patch, since their kits are being adjusted to buff and even deal stellar conduct damage themselves. For Electro, her best looking support right now is Miko by a pretty big margin, With her new buffs, Yae can deal a lot of off-field electro and stellar conduct damage. And with her C1, which you can get for free from the selector, she also buffs electro and stellar conduct damage for the team, making her pretty much Sandrone's dedicated support for the time being, at least until we get Snezhnaya's real dedicated stellar conduct support. If you don't have Yae, you can use the newly buffed C6 beta or official, but there will be a noticeable damage difference without Yae. For the cryo slot, Escoffier looks like one of the best options. Even though Sandrone's team is not a full hydro and cryo freeze team, Escoffier still gives some cryo res shred from her passive, provides healing, and deals consistent off-field cryo damage, which is exactly what this team wants. A strong alternative to Escoffier, funny enough, is the newly buffed Qiqi. With her new buffs, she becomes a very solid healer, increases stellar conduct damage in her base kit, and if you manage to get her up to C6 from losing your 50-50 over the years, she now gives additional quill-like buffs to stellar conduct damage, which makes her an even better option for Sandrone than Escoffier. But even without C6, Qiqi is still one of the best supports for Sandrone, which is so nice to finally see her having a solid use and relevance in the meta. You can also use the newly buffed C6 Diona, especially if you want a shield, healing, EM, and the new stellar conduct buffs she's getting. Now for the last flex slot, Nicole currently looks like the best option thanks to her team-wide attack buff, which gets a lot of value in Sandrone's teams, because you are not only buffing Sandrone herself, but also off-field damage dealers like Yae and Escoffier. But if you don't have her, then Qiqi is the next best option thanks to her strong stellar conduct buffs. Aside from Nicole and Qiqi, you can also use supports like Shilonen, Yansan or Sucrose, and they should all work fine as more generic support options. Otherwise, you can just go for other electro or cryo sub-DPS units, which would still work great. Even her free-to-play team can still reach around 90,000 team DPS, and with her weapon up to 110,000, which is still solid all things considered. But Sandrone's current premium team can reach around 120,000 team DPS, and with C6 Qiqi can even reach around 130,000, which is already respectably strong and just under Skirk damage numbers. But don't let this trick you into thinking she is not good enough. I didn't clickbait you. Given the amount of buffs she's predicted to receive, she will surpass Skirk and maybe even the entire Lunar DPS lineup very soon, or at least reach the next top 5 DPS characters. Giving the stellar conduct design is pretty much one-to-one with the Lunar reactions, doing the same enhanced old reactions, having the exact special passive for the new characters, and literally using the same formula. It is pretty safe to assume Hoyo is following the same direction they took in Node Cry. And that means Sandrone will very soon get both a dedicated stellar conduct support and a supportive stellar reactions artifact set. On top of that, the Cryo Archon will likely be designed around stellar reactions and buffing the stellar DPS characters, and maybe we even get an additional sub-DPS artifact set like in Node Cry. Altogether, this means she could easily get around a 50,000 team DPS increase, putting her on Zibai's level, and honestly the number could be even higher, making her for sure the strongest Cryo DPS in the game, so don't sleep on her like we slept on Inefa when she came out. Lastly, for DPS characters like the newly buffed Cyno and Wriothesley, who are also expected to work with stellar conduct, Sandrone is currently the only character in the game who can technically enable the reaction for them, which is a bit awkward since there is no synergy here, with both being on-field DPS characters. So hopefully we'll get the dedicated stellar conduct support very soon to complete both the buffed DPS characters and Sandrone herself. Now let's quickly break down her constellations to see if they are worth investing in compared to her signature. C1 lowers the rate at which her bar fills up while she uses her charged attack by 50%, letting her shoot each beam for longer. It also increases the whole team's stellar conduct damage by 30%, which is relevant thanks to the new buffs coming in the same patch. This is a nice quality of life and team damage constellation. C2 is extremely strong, giving her condensed beams a huge crit damage boost. It starts at 40% crit damage, then keeps stacking another 20% crit damage up to 3 times as she fires more beams, reaching a total of 100% crit damage. C3 increases her normal attack talent level, which is very good as it increases her charge attack scalings. C4 makes Sandrone summon an extra coordinated beam attack whenever she deals stellar conduct damage. This can trigger once every 4 seconds, which is a very nice addition to her damage and stellar conduct buff stacking. C5 increases her burst level, which is nice for a bit more extra damage. And C6 makes every third condensed beam turn into a stronger continuous beam, adding 4 extra hits. While Sandrone is in the stellar conduct state, those extra hits become stellar conduct damage, and she also gains 20% more stellar conduct damage overall. Sandrone already looks complete and very strong at C0, but if you want to invest, her signature weapon gives her around 10 to 15% more personal damage. But if you're willing to go all the way to C2, she gets an additional 10% damage increase compared to her signature, so it is better but also more expensive.
Sandrone honestly looks really cool. She already seems strong right now, but this is only the beginning for her. The Stellar system looks like it's following almost the exact same direction as the Lunar reactions, which means Sandrone will almost certainly get a dedicated Stellar support, a supportive Stellar reaction artifact set, and eventually the Cryo Archon, who will most likely support all Stellar reactions as well. With this many buff coming for her, I can comfortably predict she is going to take her place as the best Cryo DPS we've got so far, and has a good chance of also becoming one of the top 5 strongest DPS in the game once we get all the Snezhnaya main DPS units. But there is also a chance she ends up being the weakest out of the Stellar DPS, simply because she is the first, and the later DPS units that come out will just be stronger and stronger, which is something we also saw in Outcry. Personally, I'm definitely going to pull her. I love how her kit designed around all of her talents synergizing and buffing each other. And of course, I just love the laser beam type mechanic, as I truly think it's a broken mechanic in any video game. The AoE of the beam, the ability to pierce through enemies, the range, and the option to hover around while doing it all give her a higher level of comfort that is extremely valuable, and it's one of the reasons Jubilette stayed so good to this day. So overall, I think Sandrone looks like a very strong and exciting pull, with massive future potential that will at least keep her very relevant for the coming year, with all the stellar mechanics that will probably dominate the Abyss and Stygian. So if you like her design and beam focused gameplay, especially if you already have someone like Yae who's just waiting to be revived, and you want to invest early into the next reaction system, I think she is a great pull going into Snezhnaya. And that's a wrap. If this video helped you in any way, consider giving it a like and subscribe for more filter guides. I'm also streaming every day, so if you want me to review your account or have any questions, I'll be happy to help there as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!
Feel